Memories of Michael follows the journey of a very young and promising MMA fighter named Michael Wilson, who has a very promising, potentially great career ahead of him, except it gets cut down tragically by a terminal illness. And the story really revolves around not only him, but the characters in his life, the people that love him, and how this sudden twist of fate affects all their lives.
Memories of Michael is about family. It's about grief, it's about love, and it's a coming-of-age story for all of the characters.
Memories of Michael is about love, family, and the idea of keeping people's memories alive.
Memories of Michael is about my son. For me, it was about the way, what he meant to me, and it's my memory of showing what a wonderful person he was, and although we didn't always agree on particularly the fighting, it was me and him through our whole life together, because his father died when he was quite young. So for me it's a story of real people going through some pretty tough times, but love in a nutshell, I think.
Well, Memories of Michael is about the way that someone's journey can impact your own life. Someone else's journey can impact your own life. And how sometimes family can affect what happens later on to other family members.
Memories of Michael is about Michael Wilson. He's a very driven young man with dreams of becoming a mixed martial arts fighter, except his dreams get dashed right before they can even start.
Well, I became involved in Memories of Michael, first of all as a writer. I had been acting for a few years, and I sort of wanted to try my hand at writing and possibly directing too. So I pieced together a potential script for a feature film. I really wanted to focus on a character that was in my age range, and a support group that was not only in Michael's age range, but also the ones above him, like parents, trainer, etc. I wanted there to be a fair amount of drama and a fair amount of shock involved in the script, something that would really maybe catch the audience off guard and go, oh, where did that come from? And so it's just something that was a bit, not something you'd probably see every day in films these days, but still realistic enough to capture everyone's imagination, and hopefully a piece of the script at least is something that everyone who watches it can relate to.
I first became involved through an email from Andrew asking me to audition. We had worked together previously on some children's shows. We got along really well, and obviously he thought I'd do well in the part, so I auditioned for him, and we had a lot of chemistry in the room because he was playing Michael, he was reading for him, and I had so much fun bringing Vicky to life in the audition room that kind of just all went from there.
I had known Jade previously from a show that we'd done together a few years before, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, which was a children's show that we did for the school holidays, and from that I saw the potential that she had as a performer, and I knew that if directed and coached on set in a sufficient way, that she would be able to bring out the realness and the rawness of Vicky's emotional journey as the script goes on. So Jade in my mind was always first in line for the role of Vicky.
I first became involved in Memories of Michael through contacting Andrew on Star Now after he listed an ad for his movie. We had a Skype audition and we just clicked. I found out later that he'd seen me in a play previously, so yeah, we got on like a house on fire.
I had seen Anthony in a play from one of the theatre companies that I'm involved with. He played the lead role in Wuthering Heights. I went and saw that show, and I was quite impressed with his performance. And then I didn't really think much else of it at the time, but it turned out that he applied for my casting call online for the role of Rob, and I had a look at his show reels, and his show reel work equaled the standard that he'd set in Wuthering Heights too. So we did an audition over Skype, and I offered him the role right then and there. He was Rob.
Well, there was an audition notice. I actually knew Andrew from working with him a couple of years previously to this. and I didn't know that he was behind it, and I just applied because it was a feature film and it looked interesting, and there was a role from my sort of age group. And Andrew rang me and said, "Would you audition?" And I'm like, "Oh, hi, nice to see you again." So I auditioned, probably like everyone else, and that's how I got involved.
Penny, like Jade and Anthony, I had seen her work previously before auditions. She was actually the very first person I cast, besides myself, in Memories of Michael. I knew that she had a very, very good ability to play a very strong, loving mother character. I knew that she could easily become quite emotionally vulnerable. I had worked with her in a stage show a couple of years beforehand, and I had seen her shed tears on stage and go to those emotional places. And for the role of Margaret, who has such an emotional journey throughout the script, she was, for me, an obvious choice to cast in the role of Margaret.
I first became involved in Memories of Michael. It's kind of a comedy of errors, really. I'd actually been in another film with Andrew called Travis Jenkins, and he saw me in that, or obviously saw an actor with me in that. But that was the last that I even thought about it. I suddenly got this nudge from Anthony saying, "I'm in this film, and the director is looking for someone to play the trainer, and he's thinking about you." And due to a comedy of errors, we didn't get in contact. Finally, we got a Skype audition on my phone. And I'm running out the backyard, putting the phone up on a box, just going, "Okay, I'll just read some lines out for you," which I did. And he liked what I did, which is really fortunate. Thank you. And it just went from there.
In the casting of Scott, I put a casting call out there for the role of Scott, just on the internet to see who might be available and interested, and I got Craig Walker's application for the role. I had worked with Craig previously down in Wollongong and Nowra on a feature film called Travis Jenkins that we both had support roles in. Craig has a very strong film presence, camera presence, and he also has a very strong vocal range, which for a motivational type character such as a fight trainer, I found quite essential. And because Craig is a very, very busy actor and he has so much on his plate, we organised a time to do a Skype audition one afternoon, and he read his lines out to me several times. I gave him a few little directions as we went. But I knew then and there, as with most of the actors that applied and auditioned, that he was going to be the one that I was going to put into that role.
I became involved in Memories of Michael about a year out of film school. I saw the ad for it. It looked like a very confident story, and I felt that I could really bring some visual life to it.
After Dan Lyons applied for the role of director of photography on my internet ad for the production crew, I looked at his resume. I was pretty impressed with it. I saw someone who was young, passionate and willing to learn, so I went into Sydney one day and met up with Dan, and we had a nice little sit down over lunch and talked about how we were going to plan everything out, when the schedule would start, the kind of shot lists we would be looking at for each of the main scenes, I suppose, as a good starting point to how this film was going to be shot and the cinematic look that it was going to take on. And we got along really well. It was like two mates sitting in a cafe having lunch discussing work. So I realised that he'd probably be a very, very easy director of photography to work with on set, which he was. He came in, he did his best, he was willing to learn as a young director of photography, and as the film shoot went on, his skills became noticeably improved from a DOP point of view, and I think we both walked away a lot better off as filmmakers than what we were when we started, and I think that's because we got along as well as we did, and we sort of bounced off each other as we went along. Well, I thought that to myself as I was prepping the first draft of the script. I thought, what is it that will make this little independent first movie of me as a first-time producer work? And I thought to myself, there needs to be a fair bit of stuff involved that an everyday audience from anywhere in the world really could relate to. So you look at, what happens in the story, like what happens to these characters, what they need to go through, the emotional journey that they all take. That was sort of what drew me to write the script and the drama the way that I did, just to really capture the imagination of the audience, whoever it might be, and really, as they sit down and watch it, hopefully think to themselves, you know, I can sort of relate to where this character's coming from in this script. That's what I, as the writer and director, was hoping would be in the script and of course the film, that would hook not only the audience but the cast and crew that were involved in making the movie as well, and give them the energy and promise, I guess, in order to stick with it and see it through to the finished product.
First and foremost, when I read the script, I loved the story. It was a tearjerker. It was a huge emotional journey for all the characters. And what I really loved about it is, although it was about Michael, it was more about everyone else and how they experienced all of this. And it was about them. It was about real people. There was no sugarcoating. People said what they thought, and it was it was a breath of fresh air, really, and I really enjoyed reading Vicky's emotional journey, and I connected a lot to her. I found a lot of myself in it, often to my own detriment. There was a lot of her and me, but I had a lot of fun just discovering it, and I knew I could play with her, and I loved working with the people, so I knew there'd be chemistry there, and yeah, it just looked like a really awesome opportunity.
The thing that hooked me about the script for Memories of Michael was the character dynamics, and how when I read it they just came alive in my head. You had all these interesting people going on these very different journeys, all centered around Michael, and how his singular journey impacted theirs far and beyond the story.
Probably the emotional side. To be perfectly honest, I'm not really into fighting or boxing or martial arts. They don't mean a lot. So I don't watch a lot of martial arts movies. So it was the human side of the story that hooked me, the relationship between the characters, Vicky and Margaret and Michael, and just the friendships that she had with his friends, that side of the story. Because Margaret herself doesn't really go to any of the fights. For her, it's all about her son, and for me, it was all about that side of it.
It was the way that it treated family, the way that it treated the way that we relate to family, and the way that we relate to incidents that happen in our lives that are life-changing. That's the thing that really grabbed me.
Memories of Michael really drew me in because of how it was such a real story. They were real people going through this extraordinary situation. Their relationships get affected. What they do day to day gets affected. And it was great to be able to visually represent this journey.
In the film, there's a number of themes that are drawn on. There's young love, there's maternal love between Michael and Michael's mother, brotherly love as well, I suppose, between Michael and his best friend Rob. But then there's also very strong pride and competition, and I suppose ego and arrogance between Michael and his arch nemesis, I suppose you'd call him, Jared, who's another MMA fighter that's always sort of gotten the upper hand on Michael, and it drives Michael nuts. So while there is one element of the positives in life, there's also the things that can sort of take us into our own headspace and really make us quite closed off sometimes and hard to deal with because we're so passionate about it. So I think that as well is something that a lot of people who watch this film will be able to relate to as well. My approach to working on Memories of Michael, more than anything else, was to really use this as a learning experience and really leave myself open to the suggestions of the other people involved. Because my roles in this film are writer, director, producer, and a lead actor. So I had a lot on my plate. And when you get the whole thing coming from sort of one person, it tends to be very narrow in where it goes. So I tried as much as I could to get input from everyone else involved, any script edits that needed doing, I was fairly open to. The way that a scene was being shot, as well, was another big thing that I was quite open to, with the production team's input. And also the cast as well, being that I'm a director but I'm also a fellow cast member in this thing. I'd give my direction to each actor as we went through each scene, but then I'd also try and sit down with them either before or between takes and say, what did you get out of this when you read this part of the script? You know, what did you think your character's objective was? And so we sort of worked out a mutually agreed upon scenario for that scene that we could both really work on, or three of us or four of us, whoever was in the scene, to really make it as strong as possible. And I felt that really helped. I think it became a lot more interesting final cut of the film than what it would have been if I had have just called all the shots myself. So that was my main approach, to be quite open.
Memories of Michael was my first feature film. I primarily come from a theatre background. A lot of my training is from that point of view. So when I got offered this opportunity, it was a great chance for me to experience and transform myself in a new medium of filmmaking. So I experienced a lot as I went. I kind of went into it very open, very happy to learn. It was a huge learning curve for me, because the medium of film is such a different size and scale, and I found myself really delving emotionally to places I'd never been before with this film. Thanks to Andrew as well, who was wonderful in directing and bringing that out with me. So it was such an awesome experience.
My approach to working on Memories of Michael was to look at how Rob was needed in the script, and essentially he's there part as comic relief but part as that sort of rock that Michael needs to be able to go through that journey. And so I just drew on my own personal experiences of friends that I've had who've helped me out, and partying and drinking and being responsible. Yeah, having fun was a large part of it for me.
Well, it was quite an emotional role. It wasn't all happy stuff. So I suppose quite a bit of preparation was involved in sometimes on some of the scenes, because it meant that you had to go to some pretty dark places. But there was also some, I think like most actors, you just do your own personal preparation. If you know you've got a heavy scene coming up, I do a lot of preparation in my car because I drive a lot to various gigs. So I spend a lot of time in my car working on scenes and working on how I feel that I should be playing this scene, and talking with the other actors, and talking to the director, and talking to the people who were to find out how their slant on what they wanted, and trying to sort of meld it all together. I suppose that's the process that most actors go through.
My approach to working on Memories of Michael was, I guess, could be better put as my approach to actually playing Scott. I really kind of drew on a lot of the teaching that I've done with kids in the past. I've done drama teaching with kids, and I've also been tutoring younger actors as they're coming up through the ranks. And so I just drew on that type of thing. The approaches of not so much smacking them around the head, although you might see a little bit of that happening, but more the case of encouraging them and showing them what their positives are as opposed to just their negatives.
Realizing what the real heart of storytelling is, which is to bring that emotion out to engage the audience with. So every day it was all about, how can we best show the journey that these characters are going through, because they have their heartbreak, they have their tragedy, but they keep on fighting and they keep on trying to be true to themselves. And every day it was, how can we show this? How can we bring this story, to life?
Let me describe working with Andrew on Memories of Michael as a director, because I'd only ever been involved with him as on screen, so I had no idea about what he was going to be like. Matter of fact, I was expecting it to be kind of, point a camera and maybe we'll get something in the can that could be kind of good, because I don't know what he's like at all. I was remarkably surprised as to how dedicated he was to getting the product done correctly, getting the right shots, making sure the sound was right. He actually was all over the entire process, and that was, whilst it was a surprise, it was a real pleasant surprise to see someone that young in that job doing that job to that level.
Working with Andrew was a really positive experience. Because we'd worked together before, we got along very well, and we were both very open in discussing our ideas and what we wanted from the characters and from the scene.
Yeah, very open to creative discussion. You know, he had his idea, but he would let us bring our own creative input to it to really help shape the scene into something unique.
I really appreciated Andrew giving us space and time to develop thoughts and where we wanted to go with the scenes as well. So sometimes he would just talk to me before we even start and just say, you know, think about a time in your life when, and then he would say, go into it with that approach, or think about a memory, and then we'd create a memory that may not be in the film that Michael and I might have had, and then I'd come into the scene thinking about that, and it came from a very organic place. So it was wonderful working with him.
Working with Andrew as a director for me was fantastic because we ended up kind of building that relationship that we needed as Michael and Rob through working as a director, discussing the script and going outside and training after hours as well. So building up that relationship on many different levels, I think, helped the project in a lot of different ways.
Actually, Andrew and I are friends, or I would like to think we're friends. It was fun, actually. It was nice. He shared a lot of his personal space with us. He's a nice guy to work for. I'd worked with him on a play, but just as an actor, so it's very different working with someone who, as a director. But because he was also playing my son, it's hard to get out of the box. So, but no, I really enjoyed the experience. It was fun working with all the crew, to be perfectly honest. I really enjoyed it.
Well, having Gordy as first AD on this production was a huge help, not only for me but for the rest of the cast and crew as well. He's probably the embodiment of the experience that came with our production team, where the rest of us were in our early to mid-20s and really only had a few credits to our name. Gordy has that extra 10 or so years of experience that became the driving force to keep us all in the game, keep our headspace where they should be, and really help bring this production together and make sure that we got the best out of each and every day. And it was so lucky too that we actually ended up having him in the role. I did have another young man who was scheduled to be my first AD on this thing, but due to unavoidable circumstances, he had to pull out probably 2 to 3 weeks before we originally rolled up on principal photography. So Gordy came in and not only was the sound guy, but also was willing to take on the role of first AD, and that meant that he could call any cast or crew that happened to be running late or in trouble or struggling to get to set, and he would also put out the nightly call sheets so that everyone knew where they had to be and what we were all doing, and just really that positive, brought about that positive atmosphere to the set that I think kept the rest of us newcomers to the industry, I suppose, going, but also gave us sort of a realistic approach to how film sets actually work and how they're run.
I loved working with Gordy. He made us feel so comfortable on set. You know, it was so easy to work with him, I think, which was a highlight for me to have. Not that, like, everyone knew what they were doing, but he was so on it, both as AD, sound. Oh, he was a bit of a jack of all trades on set.
Working with Gordy as the AD was just fantastic. I mean, he looked after the entire production, made sure everything ran smoothly, everything was on time, on point, and it really almost couldn't have happened without him.
Because Andrew was both director and actor, there were often times where he couldn't be that outside eye, the outside director eye for the scene. And Gordy, as an AD, was wonderful because he would talk to Andrew. I mean, you know more about this than I would, but he would really try to get an idea for what he wanted, and he was so respectful of Andrew's ideas. So when Gordy stepped back and sort of took over that third eye, so to speak, of the scene, he would then check in with Andrew and make sure that it was what he envisioned, and often they were, correct me if I'm wrong, but they were always on the same page. I know an experience I can reflect on is when it was a solo scene for me, and I experienced them both as directors and as crew in the room. And Andrew was sitting next to me, and really, because it was a bit of an emotional scene for me, and he was preparing me, he was talking things through me, which really helped for the scene. And Gordy, on the other hand, was sort of there with Dan, because it was just us in the room. It was very emotional and private, and he was sort of making sure that he was invisible. He was like the ninja guy in the background to make sure that like it was just us. So it felt like it was just us in the room. And then by the time we started the scene and Andrew disappeared and Gordy disappeared around the corner, I was alone in the space. They didn't exist anymore. So they really helped me get into a space where I was completely alone and completely there. And I honestly, Gordy really helped make this Memories of Michael what it is.
I love working with Gordy. He's so much fun. He knows a lot about the industry. Taught me a lot because he's been on that side of it, and like all of us, we're always learning. And I found I learned a lot from Gordy, and I really enjoy working with him. He's always fun. He was always really easygoing, easy to work with. Didn't get stressed, or if he did, he didn't show it, and that's really nice.
He was all over the shop. I mean, when I say that, I mean across the entire production. Knowing exactly where things needed to be, calling up things, because Andrew, as the director and also as the star, can't be across that sort of stuff. So really taking first ADing into the kind of really AD, semi-co-directing at times, because you have to direct the writer and the star and the director as well. Making sure that they hit their spots, they hit their marks. He was really, really good with that. Also really good with making sure that everyone felt comfortable, making sure that if anything looked like it might possibly go wrong in the very near future, that it wouldn't, because he would be across it before it even happened. It really a really friendly first AD too. I don't run across many of those in the industry these days. They're all some of them are a bit like martinets. I'm not going to say who they are, obviously, but Gordy was one of the friendly and good ones that made people feel comfortable throughout the entire production.
Well, working with Dan Lyons as DOP was very interesting for both of us, I think. I got his application for the role on an internet ad that I put up for the film, and I read through this young man's resume, what he'd done, what he hoped to do, the sort of things he had been involved with, and I saw a young up-and-coming director of photography that seemed really quite willing to learn and just rock up and take on the challenge. That's what I think drew me to bringing him into the production, and I think that's why we were happy to have him as our director of photography, is his passion and dedication to the film, but also knowing that this was his first role as DOP for a full-length feature film, and that he would learn as much as he possibly could, and like we all do our first time around, make a few mistakes along the way, just as I did and just as everyone did, but he was willing to learn as he went along, and he was very easy to work with. So that's why I liked working with Daniel Lyons as the director of photography.
This is for Dan and for the rest of the camera crew that were on board, especially for emotional scenes, intimate scenes that required me to really be very vulnerable. They took so much patience to make me feel like they weren't even there, which was so helpful for me. They gave me space and time, and honestly, it didn't feel like they were in the room. I didn't feel intrusive, and often we were filming in very tight spaces where the camera was right there, but in my memory of it, because they really gave me that time to sort of be in the moment. It was so fantastic. It was a great experience for me.
Working with Dan Lyons on Memories of Michael was great because he's very comfortable chatting with people, discussing shots, and he's very happy to kind of say, this is what we're going to be doing this time, and this is what we're going to be doing this time, so you know exactly what you're going to be working with in terms of frame and everything like that. It was really good in that respect that he wasn't afraid to just hang around and chat. And I'd actually worked with him on a short film about a year or so ago, and didn't realise that he was going to be the DOP until I got there on set and went, "Oh, it's you."
Yeah. I remember.
Oh
that.
no.
Oh, it's you.
He's such a clever person that I think that he's got all these thoughts, and they're not always relevant to what you're actually doing, but you can see that he's got all these thoughts, and it's so important. And yeah, it was a bit of a ride sometimes.
He's a sharp lad. He really is. He's a little finicky when he has his camera. No, put that focus back in, mate. He's a little finicky when he uses his camera, which is good. The thing I liked about him is that even if we got our stuff done right and we nailed it and our emotional core was there and we honed in on the absolute emotional rawness of the scene, that he'd make us do another take just for camera. Which, if you think about it, is just the way it's supposed to happen.
It's true.
Yeah.
Working with Gordy as the soundy for Memories of Michael was a very interesting experience for me, because sound was not, as a filmmaker, really an area of film that I had any knowledge of. I'd been an actor, I'd done a bit of writing, and I knew a little bit about the photography of a film and the shots and all that stuff. Sound, besides a boom pole and lavs, I really knew absolutely nothing about. So Gordy came in with this great experience about him. He just finished working on one of the series of The American Survivor, so clearly had a great deal of experience with recording sound on a location. So he was a great crew member to sort of watch as he worked between takes or during takes when I was directing and not acting, just to see that side of filmmaking. And I learned a lot about sound from him, and yeah, it was just really good to see someone that passionate and that experienced in such an important job on my film.
Working with Gordy as a sound operator, it was, like I said before, it is my first feature film, so it was a great experience for me to watch him work. It was, like I said earlier, it was very easy to work with him because he knew what he was doing. Always made sure that we were clear. Techniques for me as an actor to not muffle the sound, to be clearer, how to sort of pitch my voice so it's best for the film. So working with Gordy in that capacity was really, really helpful. Also in post, because we did some ADR, he made it very, he was very clear to work with, easy, you could understand him, there was so much respect, and he's such a fun guy too, so it made me feel very relaxed all the time, which I think benefited the film hugely, when you relax on set. So in that sense, Gordy was wonderful to work with.
Working with Gordy as the production sound mixer was fantastic. He was very helpful in terms of his direction and getting the most out of his sound, making sure we all sounded fantastic, and looking after everyone on set as well, taking care of all of us and making sure the production ran smoothly. It was great.
Well, he's amazing. I mean, he's a really good sound guy. I think he was incredible because I worked on a lot of indie things where sound has not been great, and it's so important that you can hear everything and you don't have all the crap going on. And even on professional productions, sometimes the sound I think it's the hardest thing to get right. We went to see a movie I'd made a while back, and the complaint that everybody had was that the sound, there's always a bit of a problem with it, and you think that, oh yes, it has to be what you see and the performance and all that is really, really important, but if you can't hear it, then it's worse than useless. So he was very, very good, I think.
100% professional straight down the line. Wants to get the best sound possible. Something goes wrong, something's in the background, some sort of aircraft going somewhere or something like that. He's always on top of that sort of thing. He'll do extra takes just to make sure the sound is correct, because everyone knows you'll forget a bit of a fuzzy picture, but you won't forgive crappy sound.
Working with Gordy as far as post sound is concerned was fantastic. It was my first time doing ADR, and Gordy really helped me through that process and helped me understand something that I wasn't familiar with and made it a easy, smooth ride. Yeah.
I only spent one day in ADR, and he was so charming and seemed to know exactly what he was doing, and that's what you want.
Gordy, as far as post mixing and post sound is concerned, I've worked with a number of people as far as post sound is concerned, and a lot of them are quite happy just to take what sound is there and to try and clean it up and do whatever. Gordy's of that type of post sound guy that wants to do ADR for anything that sounds rubbishy, and that's again goes back to what I was saying earlier about if it's bad picture they might forgive it, but if it's bad sound no one forgives it. You've got to have your sound on point. And it's an absolute pleasure working, especially doing ADR with him, because I mean, it's a case of he knows he knows how to bring people in, he knows how to make sure the sound is absolutely spot on, and he knows how to actually wrangle that better performance from you. That even makes you look better on screen, which I really appreciate.
There are many scenes in Memories of Michael that I absolutely love, but the one that stands out for me is one that I'm not actually in. It's a scene between Vicky and Margaret, the two female leads in the story. It's a scene that just draws in on those two and their mixed feelings about Michael's situation and his passion and dream to have this one last match. It's interesting to watch for me because both these women absolutely love Michael and want to absolutely support him in everything he does, but Margaret has this huge chip on her shoulder from her youth where she just can't, she tries but she just can't support Michael in this one area of in-cage or in-ring combat. And just before Michael's final fight against Jared, Vicky explains to her that she doesn't really understand that mindset coming from Margaret, and they have this little discussion about it, and it's a bit of an argument, but a bit of a mutual conversation of here's my opinion, here's your opinion, sort of thing. But for me, it's great because it shows the real strength of what both of these women have had to have during the emotional journeys that both of them have gone throughout the script, and it shows also the love that they have for Michael as a son for Margaret and as a husband for Vicky. So it's that combination, I think, of love and strength and also a willingness to give one's opinion but also listen to the other and be accepting of it, but not exactly on mutual terms, but still having that mutual respect in a way. That to me was really good to see. The mutual respect, the strength and the love coming from those two ladies.
Two highlights I can think of is one, for me as an actor, as a developing, growing actor, was when Vicky finally came to terms with Michael's illness, and I went to places that I hadn't as a performer gone before, and it was not performing. It was just going to a place. It was very real. I'd forgotten that I was on camera. That was with the help of Andrew's coaching and everything, and it was just a scene of packing up his clothes. And for me, as an actor, it was very transformative and very real. Another one was working with an actor, Justin, who played the character of Jared, who was a bit of a rival to Michael, and he's a wonderful performer, and we had a lot of chemistry on set. He's very great to work with. We bounced off each other, and we did a scene in the bar where Vicky is a bit intoxicated and she makes some mistakes. She does some things that night which she may regret the next day, but for me, I struggled coming to terms with women being in the wrong when they drink, and myself and Justin spoke about it, and we found a middle ground which was very believable, where it wasn't about anyone being at fault. It was about actions that are made due to anger, due to grief, due to needing someone and comfort. And for me, that was a wonderful scene, and he's a wonderful actor to work with. So they're two highlights.
My favourite scene is the party sequence, purely from an entertainment point of view. After seeing it come up on the screen and seeing it come to life, I found myself laughing at it a lot more than what I thought was happening on the day, and it was really came together well.
My favourite scene to do, which sounds bizarre, was the death scene, because it was very challenging, but I think we made something special there, and it felt special. I haven't seen it, so I can't say whether it looks special, but actually performing it felt very special doing it.
My favourite scene in Memories of Michael? Look, to me, I think it's a toss-up. My favourite scene for quite a long time was the very first scene that I shot, which was where I'm approached to actually train Michael. And for various different reasons, I'm not particularly interested, or I'm a bit curmudgeonly, or a bit of the Clint Eastwood on the porch, get your kids off my lawn type of guy. And I really enjoyed that kind of dynamic that I had with Andrew in that scene. But also, I guess equal-ish would be another scene that comes later on in the film, where a number of us are standing in a bush setting at a lookout and having a bit of a discussion. That was that was actually kind of a good scene too. Can't say much more about that one.
Fair enough.
I was like,
Keeping secrets.
Yeah, you got to keep secrets. Watch the film, you'll see what I mean.
Well, I had a lot of challenges working on Memories of Michael, just because of the amount of roles I was taking on, and making sure that they were all sort of balanced out while we were shooting and while we were in post, because I'm trained to be an actor. I'm not trained to be a writer, director, or producer, so it was a challenge for me to not just be an actor on set, but be everything, all those other roles as well. So for me as a writer, a huge challenge is the fact that I'd written stories before, but never really a proper screenplay. And I was told about this by acting tutors of mine several years ago, that just because you write something and you read it to yourself and it sounds good in your head, doesn't really mean that it's going to sound all that great when you hear two actors actually speaking the lines to each other. Which I sort of went, that's cool, I sort of understand that, but we'll be alright. And there were certain scenes in the film where we went to shoot and I heard this dialogue coming out of the actor's mouth, and I sort of was sitting behind the camera going, did I write this? So some scenes and this is where I was allowed myself to be quite open with the cast and crew, was we had to sit down, rework some of the lines that weren't working, chop a fair bit of dialogue out to pick up the pace of the scene and keep it interesting. So that was a big challenge for me as a writer. The only directing I'd ever done before this was on a short film that I had also written when I was back in TAFE, about 4 years earlier. And again, not being a trained director, just throwing myself in the deep end, so to speak. I felt that I could do a good job at directing this piece because I wrote it and I knew when I was writing it how I wanted each actor to be in that scene, what objective I wanted them to have. So I thought that the directing would be fairly straightforward for me. I learned though quite quickly that it's quite difficult to direct and act at the same time, and particularly because I was in a lead role and on camera so much of the time, it was hard to snap myself out of character between those takes, go into director mode, and then snap myself back into character for the next take. So that was a huge challenge for me as a first-time director. I understand why a lot of people refuse to be an actor and a director on the same project. I do totally now, after this experience, understand that. But thankfully I had people like Dan Lyons and Gordy Fletcher behind camera as well, also being able to look through the viewfinder when I couldn't, to tell me or give me an idea of what they thought worked and what didn't work. So that sort of kept me my head above water in the directing side of things. just being a film producer, I think, as well. I don't think anyone that does it for the first time really knows how much work is involved. From organising cast and crew, filming locations, your budget, not just for getting it shot, but also once it goes into post-production and you've got editors and post-audio team working on it for hours and hours and hours just trying to get it all right, that becomes quite time-consuming and a lot more costly and a lot more detailed, I think, than a lot of first-time filmmakers really realise that it's going to be. That was a big challenge for me as a producer. And of course, in the acting side of things, acting was where my experience was, but I'd never, except for a short film that I did for one of my old teachers, I'd never thrown myself into a lead role before. And being a lead role on a feature film as well was a pretty big thing for someone who hasn't had much experience in a lead role. So, and a lead role as well that required me to be quite emotionally vulnerable and have quite a topsy-turvy roller coaster of emotions as the script went on. And a script that we did not in any way shoot in chronological order, having to switch it on day from day to day, all these different places. That was my big challenge as an actor on Memories of Michael. So, yes, between all the roles I was involved in, a lot of challenges, but I think I came out of it relatively well.
I'd say one of the most challenging things was, in essence, it's about Michael's friends and family and how we experience the stages of grief. And because we didn't film the film in order, it was challenging to find where we were, where our headspace was emotionally, how we felt about certain things at different points of the scene. I think I can reflect on a lot of scenes with Penny Day, who plays Michael's mother, and a lot of our scenes are together when we're reflecting on memories and experiences with Michael where we had to go to places, but because we filmed them all over the place, we had to really lock in with each other and trust each other that we're both in the same headspace and emotional place. And a lot of the film we are on par with each other, but there are times that we're not, which was a choice. It was on purpose, but about balancing that amidst filming the emotional things first and then the happy things last, and that was a challenge, filming all over the place.
No such thing as chronological order in filmmaking.
Yeah, no, not at all. But with a film like this, it certainly it had its moments.
Well, I think the biggest challenge I had in Memories of Michael was hitting a couple of emotional notes that were at the time relatively raw. And I can't go into why. I can go into why they were raw, but I can't go into much detail because, again, spoilers, sweetie. So suffice to say that it was a challenge. It wasn't impossible. It was a challenge to bring that stuff up that was new and bring that into what was being shot at the time. And I think that's always a challenge for actors. I mean, those who say, oh yeah, I can just turn that on and off, well, they've probably been doing it for 70 or 80 years. Or you're Susan Sarandon, one of the two. But that's not to say that Susan Sarandon is 70 or 80 years old. She's not. I love you, Susan. It's fine. However, people who say they can turn that stuff on and off, they're not actually in the moment. They're paying lip service to it. You've got to be able to bring the truth into it, I think. And because of the time that it was that raw, I think that's kind of why it was difficult. Not impossible, but it was difficult.
My biggest challenges, apart from physically getting to locations, was just some of the scenes were very, very deep, dark, and very challenging to get to that place. But I think that they were my biggest challenges.
I think my biggest challenge on Memories of Michael was the fact that it was my first ever feature film, and it's very much a different structure than working on a short film or even working in theatre. And not so much a challenge, but more just a really big learning experience for me, being on set day after day and seeing the story and the script evolve as you were working on it, sometimes getting there and being given your lines on the day or improvising on the day, and just going with it. And it's stuff that you don't really learn in drama school.
Overall, I feel quite good about my work on Memories of Michael, taking into account that I am by training an actor, and I had never produced a film before, and had only had very limited writing and directing experience before this. The fact that we as a team, with my direction and my central idea, have been able to put together this film to the extent and quality that we have, yeah, I feel quite good about it. I mean, obviously, like with anyone, with anything they do, they look back and go, oh, you know, I probably could have done that better and probably could have done that better. But for me, it was a learning experience, and it's something I'll know to do differently next time. And even then, you know, the next film I do, I'll be saying the exact same thing. I know I will be saying that same thing to myself right now as I sit here and talk about this one. So it's something that we all go through, I think, to learn as we work and do things like projects like this for the first time. And all in all, look, there were days where I was quite down about the work that I had done, days where I was quite stressed about the amount of work I still had to do, but I don't have any real complaints, really. I think I came out of it relatively unscathed, and I think for a first-time filmmaker, I can go to bed at night knowing that I've done the best work that I could have with what I had.
Overall, I feel really good about my work on Memories of Michael. I had just finished my performing arts bachelor at ARDA. I was at a place where I really wanted to test those skills on film in particular, because it was a medium I was new with. I allowed myself to fail, which was a huge risk, and it felt right. I really enjoy failing just as much as I enjoy succeeding, and what was so great is I was surrounded by people who weren't afraid to say, that wasn't great, let's do it again. So it was wonderful in that aspect. For me, working with such generous actors was one of the greatest experiences on this set, I could possibly say. Not just actors, crew as well. A highlight is Caitlin, who played my best friend, or Vicky's best friend, Jess. She really helped me take me back to my high school days, in all the high school scenes. You know, that bubbly, first love feeling completely inadequate, and having someone you can just rely on. So working with such an incredible group of people are some of the greatest experiences I had on the set.
How I feel about my performance in Memories of Michael is that I know that it was a while ago, so having some distance from it and then coming back and seeing little bits and pieces was a very interesting experience, actually, and seeing how much I've grown, but how things that I thought weren't going to work actually came to fruition, and that it's not just the responsibility of me, it's the responsibility of everyone, the editor and sound, DOP, etc., and together you actually get a performance that's very different from what you think it's going to be in your head. And yeah, I think I'm pleased with what's come out of it.
Well, I've not seen it, apart from little bits and pieces, but I don't think anybody's ever satisfied with what they've done. They always feel they can do better, and I'm sure, I know I could do better, but, it is what it is.
It's a weird thing. I like watching myself in the rushes if I get a chance to, because I get to see, okay, I need to do that different. I need to actually hit that beat differently, which is fine. I haven't seen the thing in its entirety yet, so I can't tell you what my thoughts are on my performance, but my thoughts on how I was performing at the time, I think I was a loud, non-obnoxious type of person on set. I like a friendly set, and I always think, as a performer, I always think that there's got to be time to let off a little bit of steam. Not so much to Clooney-esque prank everyone, all that sort of thing, but I mean, you've got to have a fun set to be on, because if everyone's well-fed and well emotionally, then the actual production flows very smoothly. So I'm very upbeat on set. I'm always very much into helping other people if they need to get beats, get eye lines, all that sort of stuff. You've got to be willing to put yourself out there and do the extra bits and pieces, because after all, that's what you're there for, to make the whole thing look good. And that's what every performer, I think, is there for. So I think I hit those marks as well.
When Memories of Michael started principal photography, I was only 20 years old, and coming from a background that was very technically based, and kind of Andrew gave me a lot of freedom each day to put together the scenes how I saw fit, and it was often very nerve-wracking because there's a lot of responsibility on you to not just film something that will cut together, that you understand what's happening, but what's the best way to bring their performances out. Because Andrew was busy making sure everyone delivered exactly the performance that was needed. You know, how could I best show that on the screen? You know, how will the audience see their amazing work? And it was a big responsibility, and every day was a learning curve to make it happen.
Well, the things that I think that people will like and remember about Memories of Michael is the relatable material that is presented. The script and story itself, I think, has certain aspects involved as it goes along that most people who watch it from anywhere in the world really can relate to. And with the relatable story comes, of course, relatable characters. I think all the main characters in the film go through quite a emotional roller coaster ride as the narrative goes on, and I think that a lot of people will be able to sympathize with the character or characters and also see their points of view and realize and appreciate, I suppose, the strength that all these characters have to hold throughout the story, which is based on an event that could really happen to any family anywhere in the world at any time. I think that is what people will appreciate and remember about Memories of Michael.
I hope they will walk away going, I've been there. I get that. And they're very believable. It's a very believable, real people. They're not sugarcoating. No one was performing. It wasn't a performative film. It was just people experiencing things they felt before. And what was great is about having experienced actors and just sort of like very wise people and that is we reflected on our own personal experiences. So I think they will walk away feeling the same and enjoying the film. It's not, and I feel like we've painted quite a solemn, sad picture because it's a sad film, but it's so much fun. It's a celebration of life. This film is. So I think you're going to walk away feeling pretty damn happy.
Yeah.
Well, depending on the audience member, they'll appreciate different things. There's really something in the film for everyone. You've got the reaction of the mother to certain incidents in the film. You've got the experiences of the people as they're growing up through high school and then further on. So really, you've got something in it for everyone, and I think everyone will be able to connect to at least some part of the film.
I'm going to say define like, because there's a roller coaster of a journey for the audience. And so they're going to appreciate, I think is probably the better word. I think they're going to appreciate the grit and determination of the lead character to get along his journey path. I think they're going to appreciate the impact that journey has on all of his satellite friends and acquaintances.
Well, I would think that the fight scene would be pretty memorable. I know a lot of work went into that, and I know it was pretty spectacular. I think those would be the things, and maybe some of the human parts, sort of some of the relationships. The scene at the end where we're all remembering him, hopefully go away with that feeling in your heart. That would be nice.
In a nutshell, it is a beautiful film. They're going to like the journey. I think they're going to like the conflict, and I think most of all, I think they're going to be surprised. I think this, like we've been talking a lot about this movie being quite solemn and emotional, and it's easy to assume what kind of journey that might be, but I think they're going to walk away feeling really enlightened and happy, and they're going to enjoy seeing a film that's more about the family and less about the person.
Everyone else's satellite journey around Michael, the way that he impacts all of their orbits, I think they're going to definitely appreciate that, and definitely where some left turns happen, I think it's going to take them by surprise. They may think they know where it's going, but where it takes them, I think, is going to take them by surprise.
I think that for the audience, they're most likely to come away with it with a deeper appreciation of their own family. They'll go back and remember that our time is limited, and that to appreciate every moment that they have with their loved ones. Not just family in the familial blood sense, but family as in those closest to you.
It's that sense of fulfillment and sense of closure and sense of achievement that comes with the story. How, you know, even though there is this tragedy unfolding, you're pushing past it, and you are, you know, really fighting to find your closure and find your peace before, you know, before it's all over. And yeah, it's much more of a celebration of what you have and what you can do than kind of a journey of loss.
It has the right mix of like angst and romance that I think a teenage audience are going to really appreciate. And on the other scale of that, an older audience are really going to appreciate it, because there's so many ages in this film. It's not just us, you know, 20-something-year-old actors. There's a lot of age groups, and you get a lot of their perspective on things.
The aspect that the audience is going to remember most about Memories of Michael, I think, is the concept of family. The way that through most circumstances, family will band together. Whether it reforms in different fashions or not due to circumstance, they all, if they're a real family and they have real connections, there'll be a certain homogeneousness to it. They'll reform themselves throughout different circumstances to maintain that familial integrity. And I think most people, when they're watching that, will get that concept.
I think I speak for all of us when I say that we all loved working with Beck Hansen as the head of makeup on this film. She, like Dan Lyons, was pretty fresh out of her studies and was looking for a first feature-length project to have a big sort of role, big significant role in, and for her, the Memories of Michael was that. And she had this ability to come to set, be really involved with the team, and she not only had tremendous talent in what she did with the makeup, not only just found, you know, everyday sort of foundation makeup, but also the visual effects and special effects, cuts and bruising sort of makeup too. For someone with her age and experience, the job, I feel the job she did on that was pretty phenomenal. And she was just really a good team player, a lot of fun to be around, and was willing, as well as everyone involved on the production, to learn as we went along and also help us out in other roles, like loading the clapperboard and helping set up, you know, food with the caterer and stuff like that. So she was really a very open, friendly team player who was willing to learn, but who also had tremendous talent in the field that she was hired to be in. So I have nothing bad to say about Beck Hansen. I think she's great.
Rebecca Hansen, I don't have the words to describe working with her. She is a vicious, pain-enjoying monster, and she plucked my eyebrows to within an inch of their life.
Did you moisturise?
And yes, Craig, I moisturised.
That's what she kept asking us every single time.
She's great. And she's like a ball of fire. She's amazing. She's full of energy. She's like this bouncy thing, and she was so enthusiastic, and it was just actually her makeup was, for me, was wonderful. But she was so full of life. It was great.
What's Rebecca Hansen like as a makeup and stylist? I don't have the words to describe how brilliant this woman is. I don't have enough superlatives to say how much I enjoy working with her. I've worked with her in a number of productions, and every single time she has brought more than her A game to each production. She has made me up to look older, to look younger, to look really older. She's just brilliant at what she does. Hire her to do stuff in TV and film because she's that good.
Desperation.
I'm not a makeup artist. She's
No.
that good. She made you look 14.
I do look 14.
Damn. I thought it was makeup.
Yes, I would work with the Memories of Michael team again. They all pulled their own weight. They all rocked up to set every day and in post as well, and they all did their own bit. They did what they needed to do to make sure that the production went as smoothly as it could. As the producer of the film, you know, I can say to myself honestly that I worked incredibly hard to get this film completed, but at the end of the day it was a team effort. I'm nothing without the guys that helped me get this thing together. So yes, I will definitely work with the Memories of Michael team again.
Love to work with the entire crew of Memories of Michael again. It was definitely one of the most fun sets I've been on and one of my most enjoyable times working on a project. I'd love to come back and do something again.
If they'll have me. If they'll have me, I'd love to.
Will I work with Memories of Michael team again? I mean, the team was fun to work with and they were a joy to work with, really. So I don't have any problem with working on them as a doctor, working with them in any other production. It was a joy to work with them, and I'd be more than happy to work with them again.